there, and a very warm welcome to our special edition of India Global from Goa, where the SCO, that is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers meeting was held today, this morning in Goa, and S Jaishankar, after the meeting, hitting out strongly at Pakistan over the issue of terrorism. But before we get you all the details, here are the headlines. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, promoter and spokesperson for terror industry, S Jaishankar hits out at Pakistan, says victims of terrorism cannot sit down for talks with perpetrators of terrorism. Ties not normal with China, says External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar. India operationalizes the Kaladan project as it counters China in the neighborhood. First up, the big story from Goa. In an unusually strong stand that has been taken by the government of India, S Jaishankar today not just hit out at Pakistan and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari over the issue of terrorism, but once again underlined that talks are not possible with Pakistan. Remember, India had taken a stand in 2016 that terror and talks will not go hand in hand, will not go together. Taking that forward today, S Jaishankar has said that victims of terror do not sit down with perpetrators of terror, and that they need to call them out and delegitimize them. He also said Bilawal Bhutto Zardari was accorded the kind of reception that any other foreign minister of an SCO country would have been accorded, but nothing more than that, because he called him a promoter, a justifier and a spokesperson for the terror industry, which is, he said, Pakistan has unfortunately become. He also said that Pakistan's credibility is now lower than its forex reserves as well, hitting out at Pakistan, where it hurts most considering that they are facing a terrible economic crisis at the moment. S Jaishankar also pointed out that we need to take a hard look at the situation around that terrorism and the perpetrators of terrorists cannot be engaged with. This comes at a day when we have seen 5 Indian army soldiers being killed in action during an operation to find terrorists who were hiding in a forest near Jammu and Kashmir's Poonch. The terrorists were suspected Pakistanis and had ambushed an army truck last week, and they were believed to be responsible for killing of 5 soldiers, Indian soldiers in Poonch. So strong words there from S Jaishankar today in Goa, specifically targeting Pakistan. In fact, at the SCO platform this morning, S Jaishankar, without having named Pakistan at that point, said that the mandate of SCO is to combat terror and that the menace of terrorism continues unabated, and the world and especially SCO cannot look away from it because it will be detrimental. Let's quickly listen in to exactly what S Jaishankar had to say in Goa.
As a foreign minister of an SCO member state, Mr. Bhutto Zardari was treated accordingly. As a promoter, justifier, and I'm sorry to say spokesperson of a terrorism industry, which is the mainstay of Pakistan, his positions were called out and they were countered. You know, victims of terrorism do not sit together with perpetrators of terrorism to discuss terrorism. Victims of terrorism defend themselves, counter acts of terrorism, they call it out, they delegitimize it, and that is exactly what is happening. So to come here and preach these hypocritical words as though we are on the same boat, I mean, they are committing acts of terrorism. Pakistan's credibility is depleting even faster than its forex reserves. आपका जो अनुच्छेद 370 वाला जो सवाल जो था, which is wake up and smell the coffee. 370 is history. Sooner people realize it, the better.
Meanwhile, at the SCO platform, S Jaishankar, while he hit out at Pakistan without naming it this morning as far as terrorism is concerned, but the External Affairs Minister did not make any specific reference by naming the Ukraine war during his opening statements today. He referred to it as geopolitical upheaval, saying that COVID and geopolitical upheaval have created problems in the supply chain, that there has been a crisis as far as energy, food and fertilizer is concerned, and the decisions by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the ministers today would have a bearing on the global situation as well. Let's listen into that excerpt as well.
As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical upheavals, the world is today facing a multitude of challenges. These events have disrupted global supply chains, leading to serious impact on the supply of energy, food and fertilizers, and cascading effects on developing nations. These crises have also exposed a credibility and trust deficit in the ability of global institutions to manage challenges in a timely and efficient manner.
The External Affairs Minister today has pointed out that one of the main mandates of the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is to combat terror. What is the SCO? It is a grouping of 8 nations, in fact, that is a Eurasian grouping. Russia and China started this as Shanghai 5 in 1996. At that time, as the name suggests, there were 5 countries. Later on, it got expanded, taking in further Central Asian countries. India and Pakistan joined this organization or this grouping in 2017. This is a security and economic grouping, and today as Jaishankar, when we asked him a question with regards to how it perceives itself in a grouping that is now largely being seen as an anti-West grouping, S Jaishankar said that India will be part of any grouping where it is able to voice its opinion and which works for it. And in a multipolar world, India is straddling different groupings, is part of various groupings, and that's how it's going to be. Meanwhile, China and Russia both are very wary of the other groupings that India is part of. For instance, the Quad, which India is partnering with in Australia, US and Japan. In fact, last week at the defense ministers meeting of the SCO, the Chinese side seemed to have made a statement suggesting that the West is trying to expand NATO by subsuming Quad and AUKUS into that. What are these various groupings and how are they working currently in the geopolitical flux that we are seeing? Take a look.
The SCO, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a Eurasian security and economic grouping. A grouping started by Russia and China with Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan in 1996 as the Shanghai 5, and later included one more Central Asian country, Uzbekistan, to become the SCO. It was with Russia's push that India became a full member in 2017, the same year as China got its good friend Pakistan to become a full member too. But ironically, it was the same year that India, Japan, US and Australia decided to revive a decade-long dormant idea, the Quad. But Russia itself now openly denouncing the idea of a Quad vis-a-vis the SCO. Most recently spelled out by the Russian defense minister at the SCO meeting in Delhi. He said that the NATO is willing to establish dominance in the Asia-Pacific region. That is why the Quad and the AUKUS are integrating into the NATO. The Quad is not a security grouping, but the unsaid agenda of the Quad is to contain China's maritime and territorial hegemony in the Indo-Pacific, and that obviously doesn't go down well with China.
China is committed to promote peace, development and cooperation and building an equal, open and inclusive security system in the Asia-Pacific region that does not target any third country.
India, however, remains one country that continues to do the delicate balancing act between being a member of both the SCO and the Quad.
Meanwhile, now let's quickly take a look at the bilateral meetings that S Jaishankar had yesterday, on Thursday rather, when he in fact interacted with his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. With China, as S Jaishankar has mentioned today, that a large part of the discussion was around the border issue. Jaishankar in fact said the focus remained on resolving outstanding issues between the two sides. Peace and tranquility at the border is a must, is what India has once again communicated to China, though China on the other hand has been trying to say that the border is generally stable. As they have been pointing out, India disagrees with that assessment. As far as Russia is concerned, S Jaishankar, as I pointed out, did not mention a Ukraine war at the SCO. In fact, he used the term geopolitical upheaval. Lavrov said that Moscow supports India's G20 presidency. That is extremely important at this point because India has to drive a consensus in the run-up to the summit in September. And so far, Russia has objected to the Ukraine war figuring in any communique. Lavrov raised the need for fair multipolar order in this present times. Let me now go across to our guests who are joining us here on the show. Dr. Tara Karta, former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, and Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat. Prabhu Dayal, I want to come first to you, sir, on the strong words by S. Jaishankar today against Pakistan. How do you read this?
Well, I would have expected that he uses strong words where Pakistan is concerned, because you have to call out the biggest sponsor of terrorism in our region. There is absolutely no denying the fact that Pakistan has been pursuing a policy of sponsoring terrorism. It is state-sponsored terrorism. And that is why calling Bilawal Bhutto a spokesman of the terror industry was absolutely appropriate. I think he did not pull any punches, and given the overriding scenario, the fact that there was a Pakistani involvement in the recent terror attack in Punch where we had lost 5 of our soldiers, it was necessary to make it very clear to the Pakistani foreign minister that this is what we think of him and of his country.
Okay. All right. Dr. Tara Karta, do you think that the Pakistani Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari travelled to India with some expectations that this could perhaps act as an icebreaker, though it was pretty much clear from the beginning that S. Jaishankar, the fact that the invite was sent out to Pakistan was primarily because of the India hosting the SCO summit this year?
I doubt whether he would have had any such expectation given, Maha, the things that he said at the UN. That's not something anybody is likely to forget on this side. That is one. But even if you set that aside, the point is, even with the best of intentions, how do we know whom Bilawal, does he actually represent the whole of Pakistan government? His party is only in Sindh, right? He and his partners in the coalition are squabbling all the time. You've got Imran Khan at his heels. We don't know whether the army itself is divided. So at this point of time, thinking of any significant changes in policy is very difficult, even with the best of intentions.
All right. Now I want to dwell a little bit on China. Prabhu Dayal, on the issue of China, China is trying to portray that things are generally stable, as it calls, on the border. Time and again, for the last 3 years, India has said that ties cannot be normalized till the border issue is settled, which especially the Eastern Ladakh friction at the moment. How do you see this divergence coming through? Is China trying to de-link the border situation in Eastern Ladakh with the rest of the relationship?
Well, as I see it, the Chinese have been trying to play down the tensions which they have caused at the line of actual control. On our part, we have made it very clear that there cannot be a normal relationship between India and China as long as the Chinese build-up at the line of actual control continues. Now, that is why our External Affairs Minister pointed out that the talks which he held with his Chinese counterpart were focused on peace and tranquility at the border area, because this is of primary importance for us. Now, as the minister also pointed out, the focus of his meeting with the Chinese foreign minister was on resolving outstanding issues and ensuring peace and tranquility in the border areas, because there is no question of our overlooking what the Chinese have been up to and how this tension has been building upwards for the past 3 years. So he was absolutely right in the position that he took.
All right. I'll have to thank both our guests here. Many thanks for joining us. I know it was a very short discussion, but we have a lot more packed up for our viewers on this show. From Goa, many thanks Dr. Tara Karta and Prabhu Dayal for joining us here on this discussion. Now, as far as China is concerned, India is also trying to ensure that its influence around India with its neighbors is also arrested and curtailed to some extent, and an important step was taken in that direction with India having operationalized the Sitwe port in Myanmar with the departure of the inaugural shipment from the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee port in Kolkata. The initiative is part of the Kaladan multimodal transit transport project. Saurabh Gupta with this report.
A landmark moment as India's Minister of State for Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Shantanu Thakur, flagged off MV ITT Lion from the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee port in Kolkata. This is the inaugural shipment to the Sitwe port in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. The port has been built by India as part of the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Transport Project, a project with huge strategic implications for India.
People of India, Myanmar have been connected by historical bond over centuries.
With the port infrastructure being developed in Myanmar, it will provide an alternative transport route to India's landlocked northeastern states through Myanmar. The total cost of the Kaladan project is estimated to be around $500 million, while the cost of the port is estimated to be around $120 million. The port connects to Paletwa in Myanmar through an inland waterway and from Paletwa to Zornpui in Mizoram through a 110-kilometer road, which is still to be completed. This is the layout of the... India entered into a framework agreement with the government of Myanmar in April 2008 to facilitate the implementation of the project. The transit route envisaged between Kolkata, the nearest Indian port and commercial hub, and Mizoram as per the current implementation program. The route will provide an alternate to India's Siliguri corridor, which is known as the Chicken's Neck and is critical to connect the northeastern states and help in tackling the threat from China. India has focused on the northeastern states under the Act East policy. With international bodies like BIMSTEC now playing a key role, the government says India is fulfilling its responsibility towards its neighbors. An NDTV Bureau Report.
And from here, let's now turn our attention completely to another side, and we're moving across to the United Kingdom. Let's get you some voices of young people of Indian origin who are in the UK and how they view the monarchy as we are seeing this massive coronation.
As I can see behind me, Britain is very blue, not in mood but in color. With me are some young Indian voices, British Indian voices. I have Priya Virmani, I have Pranav Bhanot there, and I have Maya, who are young British Indians working very hard in Britain and also at the same time feeling a mixture of identities, both Indian as well as British. I'm going to go across to you guys to try and understand what this, I'll start with you, Maya. What's the mood, what's the sentiment, and what's your reaction to this Pledge of Allegiance?
I think the mood in Britain's quite mixed. Certainly since the Queen passed away, there's been a mix of reaction towards the monarchy. Me personally, I'm for the monarchy. I think they do a great job in uniting the country. People can be divided based on their different political views, but the monarchy brings everyone together as one nation.
So it's important to put this pledge into context. As the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has said, it is optional, it is not a command. So that puts it in the context of us being in a democratic country where we have the choice to exercise. But I also want to put it in historical context. So this comes from a very feudal mindset where historically the royals and peers, those at the House of Lords, are the ones who would give this pledge to the monarch at the time of coronation. And now it's been given to the people of this country. While this has received a lot of criticism, on the other hand, it can also be seen as something inclusive.
I think there is a lot that the monarchy does, which is very supportive. But don't get me wrong, there is a lot more that the monarchy needs to do. Well, they need to appeal to the young people. I think the popularity of the monarch among 18 to 25s is at an all-time low. So if the monarchy is going to remain relevant, there has to be active and proactive steps being taken, not just by the current king, but also the Prince of Wales, to make the monarchy relevant and attractive to the new generation.
Future generations.
Correct.
Now there's this one debate that props up every time the royal family is in the news, and that is the precious Kohinoor, which is only miles away from where we're standing in central London. Have you had thoughts of that? Should the Kohinoor go back to India?
Well, the Indian diaspora today right across the world is making strides, and what better symbolism of that than our country right now having a Prime Minister who is of Indian origin, who will be in an unprecedented fashion reading from the Bible as a practicing Hindu Prime Minister at this coronation on Saturday. So I think the strides we are making across the world, this is our current day Kohinoor.
I would be more in favour of a really good trade deal between India and UK, and actually focus and lobbying done in relation to a stronger future between the living bridge, the diaspora and India, than the Kohinoor itself.
I think the debate is actually wider than the Kohinoor. I think it's more about Britain acknowledging this colonial past, and I think to give credit to King Charles, he actually is the first English monarch to begin to do this. I read earlier that he's actually the first one to actually commission a study to look into Britain's role in the slave trade. His mother, on the other hand, Queen Elizabeth, didn't comment on this.
So mixed views indeed. King Charles, of course, known to be a good friend of India's, having visited India 10 times, always there for various interesting Indian things such as Ayurveda, classical music, etc., which he personally does love, including some good Punjabi food, as I hear. The coronation is on the 6th, and Britain is getting ready for a very grand, long weekend. Radhika Iyer from Central London, NDTV.
Well, that's it then on India Global this week. See you again next Friday. Bye-bye from Goa.